Hi, everybody. Michael Guberti, digital marketing strategist, co-founder of Guberti Giving, here with you today on another episode of Marketing That Clicks. For anyone who's new here, I'm Michael Guberti, digital marketing expert. If you want a Facebook, Instagram, Messenger, or Google ad made for you, email marketing done for you, or a website created for you, feel free to reach out. And this is a Marketing That Clicks episode with a very exciting guest here. David Stone has been kind enough to join me on today's episode, and quote, straight from the source of information, David is dedicated to helping people overcome the crippling anxieties that keep us all from achieving what we want, our highest potential. And after certainly making progress in the form of leaps and bounds in his own career in multiple facets, he's found a way to set out to live a better life and is also teaching people how to do just that. And now he shares what he's learned in multiple modalities and mediums: books, workshops, online courses, keynotes, blogs, social media accounts, both present and upcoming presences on various platforms. I'm happy to have David with us here today. David, how are you?
Thank you, Michael. I'm well, thank you very much, and really excited to be here with you and with your listeners here today. And I'm just so excited to be able to share the message.
Well, we're happy to have you. And speaking of that message, a lot of people might be interested to know as to how did this all start? Where did this begin? How did you get started doing what you're doing?
It's a circuitous story. I started life a long time ago, and as I've been around for a while, and I just turned 65 this year, and figured out what I want to be when I grow up. But I started life a long time ago as an architect, designing buildings and designing houses and such. Discovered that I was an entirely adequate architect. I could design my way out of a bag, but only just. But I fell in love with the marketing side of that whole business: architecture, engineering, construction, and stuff. And so I spent 25 years as a marketing consultant to what we refer to as the AE industry, architect engineer industry. And I was working all over the country, all around the world, became very well known in that space and very successful at it. And, but interestingly enough, throughout it all, I was, suffering from anxiety. Now, I want to make a big difference and make a distinction between those of us who wake up worried in the morning and spend our life worrying about things, and those who have a genuine mental illness, because that's something completely different than what we're talking about here. What we're talking about is your average day-to-day, sort of, why am I worrying so much? Why am I worrying that I'm worrying so much? Etc. Why didn't my friend like my Facebook post? Versus those people who need genuine medical intervention. And we recognize that, and we're not trying to pretend that we've got something for them. But I did spend a lot of time worrying, and I did it so well that I managed to worry myself from a healthy six-figure nationally known marketing consulting into living in my car. And fortunately, I was living in my car in North Carolina, so it wasn't in Chicago in February or anything like that.
Right.
But, in retrospect, and this was 10 years ago, but in retrospect, it was probably the best thing that ever happened to me. It was this big wake-up call. I think the universe, every once in a while, when you haven't learned the lessons, it smacks you upside the head with a 2x4 in one way or another. And that, for me, it was, waking up one morning and thinking, what the heck am I doing, having just slept in my car? This has got to end. And so I set out to say, all right, why did this happen? And what can I do about it? I'm a smart guy, I'm resourceful, etc. And I set out, I spent the next 5 years studying everything I could about myself and how the mind works and how you get yourself into these situations. And basically what I learned is that worry and anxiety are mental habits, and that we were trained from birth. We were all trained, and in some cases, even before birth. There's a lot of evidence that pregnant women who suffer a great deal of anxiety, it actually affects the infant and then the child later on. So I found my way out of it and said, wow, and got right back to where I was. And then, about a year or so ago, kind of got bored with doing the marketing. I've been doing it for a long time and, doing the same things over and over again. I said, I want to do something different. And that's when I started thinking about this. In the classic entrepreneur way, you say, all right, find a hole and fill it. That's what the entrepreneurs say. And I said, all right, what does the world need? The world needs to be less afraid of everything. And so I help the world be less fearful. And that's how I-Fearless got started. And one of the first things I wanted to do was write a book that shared my story and the processes and the methods that I learned and that worked for me. And that's when we wrote this new book that just came out 2 weeks ago called Unsubscribe from Anxiety. And so I'm really excited about that and launching I-Fearless.
Well, first of all, thank you for the context, as it is useful to know. And David mentioned his book. And can I tell you, yes, unsubscribe from anxiety, opt out of the myth that worry is required and take charge of your own life now. Now, I will tell you, having been looking at your book, there is a mention of breathing and using breathing exercises in both inhalation and exhalation to calm oneself when thinking about a particular topic. So I find breathing to be of use, and I take it was also of value to you.
No question about that. And there's such a mind-body connection. And when your mind is anxious, your body gets all tense. And when your body's all tense, your mind it works in both directions. And so the breathing really, really does help. I wanted to focus in the book on really practical methods of overcoming anxiety. And so there's a number of habits. The first third of the book really focuses on kind of an objective study of worry and anxiety. I like to take an arm's reach approach, okay, sort of almost scientific kind of approach. I've got this blob, which is worry, and I've got it on a table in the laboratory, and let's dissect it and see what it's made of and how did it get here. And so that's when we learned that, okay, this worry and anxiety feels as if it owns me and it's a part of me, but in fact it's not. And I can objectify it and kind of remove it. And in so doing, what happens is it no longer owns me, I own it. And now I can start to control it and say, no, I don't want to have that thought right now. I'd rather have a different thought. And by working at controlling your breathing, and I don't spend a lot of time in the book talking about breathing exercises, but it's certainly a very important one. But there's a lot of stuff in there about how do you start getting control over your mind and the thoughts that are going on. And, it's funny, at one point in the book, I talk about how your brain, which is the thing that does all the worrying, that belongs to you. It's one of the resources that we were given that you have to get by in the world. And it's no different than your hand or your foot or your eyes or anything else like that. Now, but your brain runs off and does its own thing. I don't want to be having this thought, but here it is, and I don't seem to control it. Can you imagine if your hand was uncontrollable like that, or your eyes, said, no, I don't want to look at the road ahead of me. I want to look at the back seat. Well, it would be trouble. So we take the approach that says your brain is simply one of the tools that we have to get through the world and achieve the things that we want to achieve. We need to learn to control that thing. And it's your tool to use. You're not its tool to use. And so we kind of reverse the ownership here. And that we find that really helpful. And it takes some practice, no question about that, because we all kind of go through life. And this is why the title of the book, this Unsubscribe, really wants to communicate the fact that this is not something that worry is not a fact of life. It's something that nobody's ever questioned it. We all say that it is, but it doesn't have to be. And if we choose to unsubscribe or opt out, we can.
I can sense your marketing background in that statement, David. Unsubscribe, opt out. Very nice. And I will say that it is accurate in your mention of doesn't have to be this way. It doesn't have to be a part of you. And I like your mention of so you have a thought, but then maybe another thought comes in. Well, it's almost like you're at a buffet. Oh, do I want that or do I want this? And you can go to the other one and you only choose the thought that you want as opposed to just whatever comes on by.
That's exactly right. I want to choose my thoughts instead of the thoughts choosing themselves. Just a perfect example. Yesterday afternoon, and that's one thing. Stuff happens in life too, and we cannot control the circumstances that happen around that. The thing that we can control is our response to them. And I had something come, I won't get into any details, but I had something come up yesterday afternoon that kind of blindsided me. And for about half an hour, I found myself really, sort of all thrown off balance and couldn't think straight. And I thought, I wonder if there's a book I could read that I could learn how to not worry about this. And I literally started, good idea. I literally started going through my own exercises. And in that process, just calmed right back down and got back into control. Because when you're consumed by anxiety, it doesn't help. You can't think straight, which is making the book. And that is that there are times, and when you're consumed by anxiety, this is one of the times, when your thoughts aren't trustworthy. When you have, when you're fall down drunk, or when you're, consumed with anger or love or one of those really passionate emotions, we think all kinds of crazy thoughts. And then the next morning you think, okay, what was I thinking?
Right.
And anxiety is exactly the same thing. And one of the tricks that we like to do is to develop what I like to call this third-party observer of yourself. So I'm capable, even when I'm angry or really high joyful or really anxious, there's a piece of me that's capable of observing myself and saying, hey, just a minute, David, you're really bent out of shape right now. Probably not a good idea to act on any of the thoughts that you're having right now. And therefore, I can say, all right, all these thoughts are running through my head, but I'm just going to wait a while and let them settle down rather than them taking over me and then doing some stupid stuff that I'll regret later on. But when I've learned that, okay, I recognize this thought, I recognize this as an maybe not invalid, but not necessarily trustworthy thought. So I'm going to treat it with a grain of salt.
And rightfully so. So a third party almost coaching role in your own consciousness. Now, with all of what we've talked about and all that you've learned and now are displaying and broadcasting out to the world, if you had to take your life's message and put it into a sentence, what would that sentence be? I'm very curious.
Oh, that's really good. That sentence would be, worry and anxiety don't have to be a fact of life. You can, and let me make it two sentences, shall I?
Yes.
Fear is the number one thing that prevents people from achieving their dreams and their goals. And that fear is the self-doubt that we carry around with ourselves, that we were taught from birth. So there's my sentence. Fear is the number one thing that keeps people from achieving their goals and their dreams. And number two is that fear and that anxiety is entirely optional. You do not have to succumb to it.
Hence the idea and the truth in unsubscribing from it, because it's a choice and you could choose not to have it. Okay, understood. Perfect. Then let me ask you, with that message, how do you go about sharing it? If you had to think of perhaps 3 of your top ways of broadcasting this and sharing a message as good as yours, what would those 3 be?
Well, Uh, there are some classic ways, and I'm working. I mean, we have our website, and we've got our social media accounts, and we're trying to build our followings because this is relatively new. It's really only in the last 6 months that we've launched this, and just for fun, prior to launching this, my wife and I took a sabbatical, and we spent 2 months trotting around Europe earlier this year in May and June, which was delightful. So it was really only after got back on 1st of July that we started this thing. And but anyway, so we've got a website. We have our weekly blog, and it comes out every Friday. It's called Fearless Friday, and it goes out, and we really would love people to sign up for that. We'd love them to share it and collect it. You can go on our website and look at the blog archive of all the stuff that goes back. You can receive a new one every Friday. We're sending out social media posts every day, multiple times a day. But the other thing is we're trying to do is to talk to people like yourself who have, whether it's podcasting, radio shows, TV shows, to share the message with your people. Because one of the things about anxiety is it's not really got a target market. You know, you can't say, okay, all people over 6 feet tall, they're the only ones that worry. So let's see if we can isolate that market. Or, you know, only people that live south of Des Moines, they're the only ones that worry. Everybody does to one extent or another about different things. If you're a mom, you worry. If you're a business person, you worry. If you're getting older and you're facing retirement, you'll worry. If you're unwell or worried about your health, you worry. And so they're all different flavors of it, but it all amounts to the same thing. And so we're able to help lots and lots of those people. So we're working hard to get the word out through publicity, like through podcasts like yours, and I'm very grateful that you have us on that. The book is a big part of it. We've just entered it into a book publishing contest, and the book is available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and all the regular stuff. It's on Kindle now, on the Kindle store, and but we're just hoping that we should hear in a couple of weeks how we did in this book, and that'll get us some publicity. So we're looking for publicity wherever we go. The other thing I like to do is, in my life as a marketer, I did a great deal of keynote speeches and workshops and such. So we're doing live workshops, but I'm also available and love doing keynote addresses. So I'm looking for organizations, associations. We've done several already. I've done hundreds of them in the past with my old hat on, but in this new one, we've done several already, and I'm really looking forward to doing more because I think it's in a message that's important. And you talk a lot about business and about successful businesses. Here's another aspect of anxiety that I think is really important for us to think about. I've been involved and worked with thousands of businesses of every size and shape all over the globe. And one of the things about any group, like a business or a team within a business, that it's almost like a person. It has a collective consciousness, and it brings with it its own collective anxiety and its own collective worry and its own collective self-doubt. So you head into a strategic planning session, say, and say, oh, here we are. We're at the end of the year. It's 2019 closing out. We're at the start of 2020. There's a lot of firms going into their strategic planning sessions. Well, what they're bringing into those planning sessions is all those self-doubt that says, oh, we could never do that. Oh, that's too big for us. We couldn't take on those competitors. And right away, you've built in that barrier, and you'll never get over that barrier as long as that self-doubt, that worry is there. And so I think it's just as important for business teams within businesses to get over that kind of anxiety, and we hear it in the sports world all the time, the kind of the coaching that has the players bringing their A games. and it applies just as much to business.
I agree, because it's all a performance environment, and your mention of strategic planning sessions is appropriate. So, and sometimes fear is almost seasonal in a way, because a lot of businesses panic in the summer when things start to get a little, and they wonder if they could even keep the doors open. But yet every year, like clockwork, it goes from the summer crisis to the winter success, and then everybody's happy again until next spring when it starts to get closer to summer, and then it just circles. But that's why your message is important, because if somebody could take hold of their thoughts, then they could really create some consistency, which prompts my next inquiry as to, we are approaching the holiday time of year, and some people, right, I know. Exactly. And some people have some anxiety related to that, perhaps not in a business sense, because a lot of businesses tend to vamp up in the holidays, but maybe as a consumer, how can a consumer prevent anxiety during this time of year?
That's a very good point, and you're absolutely right. And I'm actually, right as we speak, not well, right now, working on a little booklet that will be available for download on our website, and that is 26 ways to make this the first anxiety-free holiday season in your life, because anxiety is massive in the holiday season, which is a real shame because it's supposed to be a joyful season. But where does the anxiety come from? It comes from spending. It comes from, oh, what will my mother think? And whose place do we go to? Do we go to my in-laws' place, or do we go to my parents' place? What, and why aren't my kids coming to my place? Why are they going? And all that kind of nonsense that goes on, and you're supposed to be enjoying the holiday season. It's a super anxious time. And, but using these methods again, you can catch yourself as this sort of third-party observer, and you say, there I go again. I don't feel good. That's the one thing. Worry is probably and anxiety, one of the most uncomfortable human emotions. It feels terrible.
Yes.
And it never makes it, and it never changes anything. You sit there and you worry and you worry and you worry, and tomorrow morning, nothing has changed. So one of the things that we like to do is I say, in a situation where you're worried about something, or there's a problem that you're facing, you have three choices. Choice number one, you can sit there and do nothing. Do absolutely nothing and let this so-called problem either appear or not. Because one of the funny things is that most of the things that we worry about never actually come true.
That's true.
Well, I'm worried about this, and then, that didn't happen. If you think back a year ago, or think about all the things that we've worried about, and here you are alive and breathing. So all those things that you thought were going to make you die didn't. So the first choice is do absolutely nothing. Now, the benefit of doing nothing is you get to relax, and you get to read a book or watch a show, or go for a walk, or whatever you want to do. The second choice is to worry. And worry is terrible. It accomplishes absolutely nothing. It makes you sick. It annoys the people around you. So let's rule that out as a choice. The third choice is to do what I call take instant action. And what instant action says is, okay, I've got this problem that I think is coming at me, or maybe even I know it's coming at me, because there's a spectrum of fear, and at the one end is sort of, this is a real and present danger. This bus is coming at me right now, and I'm in the middle of the street. Okay, now you have a right to be afraid at that point, but in that situation, you know exactly what to do, and you don't hesitate. You get out of the way. Right. So if you find yourself in a situation where you're worried about something, what is something you can do in the next 5 minutes, the next hour, the next 24 hours to reduce your sense of worry about, or to reduce this problem? So let's say you're worried about the holidays are coming up. You're worried about your budget. You're worried about money. Okay, great. It's a reasonable thing to be worried about. So you can either sit there and worry about it, Or you can say, all right, this afternoon I'm going to sit down and I'm going to make a budget. And here's how much I'm going to spend on Uncle Harry. And this is how much I'm going to spend on the kids. And this is how much I'll spend on my husband or my wife, or whatever it is. And now you've done something about it, and you've got solid numbers, and you say, I can live with these numbers. And if you can't live with those numbers, change them. And now you've taken control of it. So the advantage of instant action is you've actually reduced the problem, and you feel empowered. You own the problem instead of it owning you. And as the holidays are coming up, no matter what's happening, I encourage people to say, all right, what is this? What instant action might I be able to take with this thing that I'm worrying about? I'm worried about what my mother's going to think about, the new dress that I'm planning on wearing. Okay, what can you do right now? Well, you can call your mother and say, hey, Mom, I'm planning on wearing this new dress over the holidays, and I would love it if you'd compliment me on it. That would make me feel really, really great. Wow, and your mother knows what you need, and there's so many different things that you can do right now instead of lying there worrying about it.
Well said, and a lot of practical, not only informational, but implementable information in David's book and in his words and on his site. And again, you have the Fearless Friday resource that people can get on a weekly basis, not only getting the physical copy wherever you get your books, but also digitally sent straight to your inbox. You know what time, you know when, you know what it's going to be about. So that would prompt the question, with everything you've covered, if someone wants to learn more about you, sign up for your newsletter, or take another step, how can they learn more about you?
I-Fearless, so that's I and then dash FEARLESS.com. And you can go there. There's, all about what our mission is and what we're trying to do. There's a whole bunch of resources. You can go to the blog archives. You can sign up to receive the weekly blog. You can follow us on the various things. We're getting our YouTube channel within the next 2 weeks. It should be up and ready. We are launching our very first online course, which is based on the book, module course. It'll go over a period of 7 weeks, and you can walk through, and we'll take you through videos, and you'll have workbooks and exercises that you can do. So rather than just read the book, we'll coach you through this thing, through this online course. And then, as I said, the YouTube channel should be up within the next couple of weeks, and we'll be posting. Our plan right now is 5 days a week. We'll be putting a new video on our YouTube channel, and we're crossing our fingers. We want to have tons and tons of subscribers. My personal goal, and I've got some outrageous goals, but my personal goal is to help 10 million people stop worrying and feel less anxious. And I don't think it would be hard to find 10 million people who are anxious and worried, and to help them back off a little bit about it. Here's another little tip that as the holidays are coming up, that your listeners might want to think about. And one of the tips we talk about is quit the complaining club. Now, we all know them. These are the folks that, the minute you get on the phone with them, or the minute you bump into them, they say, you say, wow, what a beautiful day. Yeah, but it's going to rain tomorrow. And boy, did you see the news? And did you hear about that earthquake? And, the earthquake was on the other side of the planet, but here we are worrying about it. And all they can do is complain. And it's very toxic, and it sucks you down as well. And I saw a great quote recently, and it said, toxic people are still toxic even when they're disguised as family. And there's one for the holiday season as well. You know what you're going to feel like after you spent 3 hours with this person. So you might want to, find a way to avoid it in the first place, if that's possible. But if it's not possible, and I get it, then prep yourself ahead of time. Say, I know this person's going to be there. I'm going to spend the amount of time possible in conversation with them, because I know how I feel afterwards. And when I do listen to them, I'm going to be like what's that old song? A few of my favorite things, raindrops on roses, and all that,
Right,
all
right.
that stuff. Just to kind of fend it off. It doesn't have to sink in. You don't have to take on their worry and anxiety.
You know what?
Here's another. Sorry, go ahead, Michael.
No, it's very timely for the upcoming season we're going into. And you not only have to prepare, but you got to almost be ready to detox after you have interacted with these people. And
Yeah.
you had another tip related to this time of year.
Yeah. One of the things that we like to do for people, because some of the most prominent worry times are when you go to bed at night and when you first wake up in the morning. We call it morning dread, and bedtime worry. And so what I like to encourage people to do is either first thing when you wake up in the morning or last thing before you go to bed at night, and write down some things that today that you accomplished that you were really proud of, that you did, that were victories, that were successes. Doesn't matter how big or how small. Maybe you had a great conversation with your brother. Maybe you finished and handed in a report at work that you were particularly proud of. Maybe you found a bargain when you were out shopping. Doesn't matter. Whatever it is, write it down, because what happens when anxiety starts to take over is all we can think about is the bad stuff that's going on. And suddenly you think, wow, there's no good stuff at all. And so if you keep this victory journal, if you want, and we talk about in the book, and if you sign up for the online course, we're going to give you the journal that you want to have, that you can keep. But when you write it down, then suddenly you think, wow, I am doing some good stuff. Things are working out for me. And that's right. Last week I got a raise. I've forgotten about that. And, because it sort of in the moment, it felt great. But then a week later, you think, oh, but look at all this traffic I had to deal with on the way to my job. And so the truth is, we've all been having successive victories right from you were born. You wouldn't be standing there alive, breathing, if you hadn't. Every single challenge that has ever come up in your life to date, you've overcome. And the proof is that you're there breathing. If it hadn't, then you'd be under the ground somewhere. And so we need to remind ourselves about that on a regular basis. So there's a little exercise I like to do. Go back and say, all right, what were 5 major things that I accomplished before I was 18 years old? Oh, cool. All right. For me, one that I remember when I was a kid, I was probably 12 or 13. I built a little go-kart. My dad had scrap stuff lying around. He had an old lawnmower engine in his garage in his workshop. And I cobbled this thing together, and it actually ran. And I'll never forget the feeling, bumping over the front lawn on this thing. And I was so pleased with myself. And so, I like to go back to that memory and re-feel those emotions of pride in yourself and victory and accomplishment. So 5 things that you accomplished before you were 18. And then, 5 things that I did in college or at my first job that I'm really proud about, that were for me. And again, they don't have to be huge. It doesn't have to be, I won the Nobel Prize, nothing like that. But just, my boss gave me a compliment. I remember that, and I did a really good job. Or, I got a really good mark in that class, and that was a tough class. Those kinds of things, they lift us up, and they shift our thinking from going to the negative to focusing on, I can do some stuff, and I can do it well.
You've done it before, and you can do it again. And reminding yourself of that, making lists of your wins. David, thank you so much for sharing these practical, informational strategies. We know where to find you, and we know what the book is. Unsubscribe from Anxiety, written by a guy who's on a mission to take 10 million people and have them be free from anxiety. David, thank you so very much for coming on today and sharing your insights with us.
Oh, Michael, it's been a delight. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it, and I really hope that your listeners get some value out of this.
Thank you.